Welcome back to A Take on the Academy, the show where we ask the bold questions the Oscars were too polite or too political to consider. Bold question? Tonight might be downright lunacy. I have never heard someone question this before, and I've questioned it since because of the lack of questioning. That's how my mind works. Oh, everyone is just accepting it? Huh, I'm not. And so here we are. Today, we're diving into one of the most iconic acting wins of the 21st century, Heath Ledger's posthumous Oscar for his role as the Joker in The Dark Knight. Now, no one's denying it was a landmark performance. Ledger's Joker redefined the comic book villain and helped elevate superhero films into serious awards territory. But was the award a tribute, a career high, or simply the Academy finally catching up to what audiences already knew? That you could find good performances in superhero movies. I mean, not all of them. Sometimes it's not the actor's fault because superhero movies, for what they are developed nowadays in a type of machine. But back in 2007, it took grit. It took Nolan and Goyer to deliver the Dark Knight trilogy. But was it the runaway win that everyone should just accept? There's 4 other nominees here. All right, there's Josh Brolin for Milk, which we won't talk about tonight. There's Michael Shannon for Revolutionary Road, which we won't talk about tonight, unless one of our guests wants to talk about the, what's another word for gigantic? I'll just call it the behemoth reunion of Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet. There's also Philip Seymour Hoffman for Doubt, a film this podcast already talked about, giving it the Best Picture award over the year's winner of Slumdog Millionaire. As fine of a performance, flawless even, that Philip Seymour Hoffman gives, I think there's only 2 actors this year that turned in performances with the help of makeup, let's say that, where you have to squint to see it was actually them. So, to challenge Mr. Ledger's award, I present the wild card. I'm presenting today the conversation that we should at least talk about Robert Downey Jr. in blackface playing a white Australian actor playing a black soldier in Tropic Thunder. Is it satirical genius or outdated madness? And should the performance itself, not the controversy, have earned him that statue? To help us walk the fine line between legacy and merit, I'm joined by Rudy, Jeremy, and MC from the Mount Rushmore podcast. If I was going to put the 2008's Best Supporting Actor race on trial, I wanted to have a debate. And who better to have the debate with than the 3 people I love to debate with on the Mount Rushmore podcast? I'll say it again. The Mount Rushmore podcast, where pop culture is carved in stone. Rudy and MC have been on the podcast before, but this is Jeremy's first time joining us. So I want to start with you. Jeremy, how the hell are you? And what is your relationship with the Oscars? Are you an avid watcher, casual fan, or fanatical shunner?
I am good and excited to be here. This is fun. I have a very fraught relationship with the Oscars because I used to love the Oscars. It was like a holiday in our house growing up. My dad was a big movie buff, and we'd always have it was like a big night. And it was fun because it was kind of the culmination of a year at the movies. It was just like, movies that were blockbusters, movies that were big hits, movies that were talked about in the culture, got their due reward at the end of the year, or at the end of the cycle or whatever, at the Oscars the following spring. And now it's just they cram a whole bunch of movies into a release slot in December. Most of us haven't seen them or heard of them. And then they give the award out at random to movies that no one cares about or is interested in. And it's become it was always by nature self-aggrandizing, but now I feel like it's literally just this insular, event where people are patting themselves and each other on the back for accomplishments that no one else is aware of.
So back in the day when you did watch the Oscars, did you have a favorite Oscar win, or was there a point where you're like, wait a minute, they are never going to fucking nominate a science fiction film? I'm out.
Yeah, that's a good question. Favorite Oscar win? That's a really good question. I mean, certainly like Schindler's List was huge because growing up in the 80s, I was a big Spielberg fan. And to see him finally get his due after years of just being passed over. I mean, I don't know how many of his movies prior to that were nominated for Best Picture. I mean, Raiders was, Jaws wasn't, but like so many of his movies got nominated and he would just get passed over. So it was this incredible, crowning finally of a well-deserved, career up to that point and since. That might be up there, definitely. I think it was, I can tell you actually, again, Spielberg. Saving Private Ryan losing to Shakespeare in Love. That was the moment where I was like, okay, I think the Oscars and I may be now on divergent paths. I was like, what the hell? No one cared about that movie. No one has talked about that movie since. It left zero footprint in the culture whatsoever. And it was clear that Saving Private Ryan was the clear-cut best film of the year, the most impactful, the most moving, the most powerful movie. It was as big in some ways as Schindler's List was just 5 years earlier. And they gave it to Shakespeare in Love because Harvey Weinstein somehow gamed the system to garner the votes. And it was stupid. And so that may be the point for me where it all broke.
So I'm going to ask you a question, then I'm going to ask the other two, and they can prepare themselves, and I'm just going to flummox you. But I think one way for the audience to kind of get to know who is talking is to see what their favorite movie is. Now, if that question is too hard, what are your top 5 films of all time?
Yeah,
that could definitely change tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely. My favorite movie is like a moving target. I would say, but I mean, top 5, I would have to say, Godfather 2. I would say Raiders of the Lost Ark. I may have to put another Spielberg in there. I may have to put Jaws in there. Got to go Empire Strikes Back because I got to put a Star Wars movie in there. Gee, this is hard because that 5th slot could change. Because I might throw in like The Great Escape, or I might throw in like The Searchers, or then I might throw in something more recent like Lord of the Rings, like The Two Towers. So can that 5 one just be open?
Yeah. I mean, I think based off of what you already gave us, I think that gives you a good kind of idea of what Jeremy is looking for when it comes to entertainment as far as movies go. Yeah. I'm going to jump over to Rudy because he was laughing throughout your entire answer for some ungodly reason. Rudy is coming back to the show. Rudy, apparently you have a better top 5 that you want to just...
No, I mean, I thought we were on an episode of Cribs and he was going to be like Godfather 2, Scarface, Goodfellas, so, but he brought it back home, so I was a little concerned.
We'll do a rant on Scarface someday because I just watched that again recently and I have thoughts, but tonight's not the night for that.
Really?
I have some thoughts on Scarface.
My favorite movie of all time, even though part of it is a little problematic, it kind of gets a pass because it's like childhood. My favorite movie of all time is The Sandlot.
What's your top 5?
The end.
Give us a spread.
Top 5: Stand and Deliver, Blood In, Blood Out. No, I'm joking. That was for MC. I love just all movies, so I enjoy I'm sorry guys, listen, if I gotta sit down and watch 5 movies, it was Sandlot, Transformers 1, Armageddon. I think, because I'm an intellectual, I love superhero movies. I think Endgame, it was just a roller coaster of emotion for me, so that's in there. And then let's give the 5th one to the greatest animated movie of all time, a Goofy movie.
There it is. Well, last but not least, the man that I have 2 podcasts with that really, and I want to encourage everybody to go listen to Stunt Life. It's our new iteration of Second Chance Cinema. It's going swimmingly. I couldn't be more proud of everything that we're doing with that. But the man that got me into podcasting with a question over an appetizer sampler from Applebee's, the legendary, the warm-hearted MC. How are you doing, sir?
I love that you said the man that I have 2 podcasts with as if they're children and we're co-parenting them. That was really good. I am genuinely so excited to be here because I am not the host. And as I'm sure you know, hosting is a very fun gig, but it can be exhausting and there's a lot of moving parts. I am thrilled to just sit back and answer questions. Genuinely thrilled.
Well, then the question is, what is your favorite movie and what are your top 5?
Favorite movie has been and likely always will be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1990. Top remaining 4, and I don't know that these are in any particular order, but Street Fighter, The Godfather, The Raid, and Top Gun. And I don't know that, I suppose there's been over the years some swaps in and out. I know Wall Street is usually a close contender and some of the other, like Rumble in the Bronx. I'm trying to think. I have a bunch of movie posters in my garage. I'm trying to go around wall by wall and remember what they are. Ghostbusters. Like Rudy, I'm an intellectual. And I think my film choices, my favorite movie choices, explore that deeply.
All right, we'll get into it. So, simple episode today. I'm going to give some background. We're going to share our thoughts on the individual actors, then their roles that they have played that we are talking about, then have a debate on comparing the two performances. And if nobody agrees that this is worthy of debate, I'm going to play devil's advocate and try to piss somebody off enough to argue with me. And then at the end, we'll crown our favorite, which you guys maybe have already decided. So, look, the Academy Awards are set in stone, but this conversation isn't. Will it be Heath or Robert Downey Jr.? To not be complete assholes here, I want to celebrate the actor no longer with us. Heath Ledger was born in Perth, Australia in 1979. He first caught international attention in teen films like 10 Things I Hate About You, and later impressed critics in Monsters Ball and The Patriot. But it was Brokeback Mountain in 2005 that marked him as a serious actor, earning him his first Oscar nomination. Ledger was known for his immersive, often intense approach to acting. He chose roles that challenged expectations, never settling into one type. Tragically, Ledger died in early 2008 at just 28 years old. Before the release of The Dark Knight, his posthumous Oscar win was the second in Academy history for an acting performance, cementing his legacy as one of the most gifted actors of his generation. Rudy, what do you think of Heath Ledger as an actor?
I think that he is somebody that defied expectations in the sense that he was on the trajectory for Teen Idol all the way into just that leading handsome man, like taking all those like rom-com roles in movies and making a great life and having a very fruitful career financially. The choices he made, I mean, tells you almost everything about Heath Ledger. In the sense that, just as you said, they were challenging roles. These were not easy. So much so that like he had started to be painted into that box when Dark Knight announcement came out, and the backlash that people were up in arms. They were like, he can't do that. You know, it's not, you mean the Knight's Tale guy, the 10 Things I Hate About You guy? Like everybody, yeah, he had Brokeback Mountain, and that was a twist. That was a turn, honestly, from what he had normally been cast in. So I think that ultimately that he definitely left his mark on the industry, as far as you don't have to just settle for being cast as one thing.
We only knew him for 10 short years. You have 10 Things I Hate About You coming out in 1999, and if he's passing away in 2008, that's 9 years, you know? And afterwards, the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, which I didn't watch.
Dr. Parnassus is good. The story behind that is, it's a very fantasy movie. There are a lot of kind of cool themes and interpretations. It's interesting because there's, since his performance as the Joker, there have been videos that have come out comparing his delivery and his voice as the Joker to Tom Waits in a very specific interview. And Tom Waits is in Dr. Parnassus as, I think he plays the devil. It's been a minute, but he plays the devil or some allegory of the devil. So it's an interesting movie, and it's cool as a sort of a posthumous performance, I guess, because that was released. I think he passed away like midway through shooting, and then the story was that, I forget all of them, but Colin Farrell and Johnny Depp, and there was one more, all stepped in to play him in different iterations of his character. So it's a cool movie. It's definitely worth a watch. But I don't know if this is good or bad, but my experience with him is pretty much limited to The Dark Knight, Dr. Parnassus, 10 Things I Hate About You, and barely A Knight's Tale. He was one of those actors who he didn't make an immediate big splash. I don't think the way that someone like Leonardo DiCaprio did when he just came on the scene and was everywhere. Like he wasn't, I'm thinking of the old like Teen Beat magazines, and every once in a while you would see a Heath Ledger pinup, but usually it was like Jonathan Taylor Thomas and for some reason Devon Sawa and all that. And so he was more like, he was actually kind of under the radar until The Dark Knight. And then until Brokeback Mountain. And then to a wider audience The Dark Knight. And then it was sort of like, oh, let's retcon Heath Ledger's career because there's some good stuff there.
And correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody knows this, but he dies really early in 2 of these movies, right? He commits suicide in Monsters Ball, and he dies in The Patriot. And it like,
The Patriot. Yeah.
Doesn't he die? And then Mel Gibson like is enraged.
Yeah.
His younger son dies first, and that's what sets Mel Gibson off, and then they go off to fight together, and then he dies in like I think it's the final battle. I think it's like the last big climax. Sorry to ruin a 25-year-old movie for anyone out there.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on Heath Ledger and the years between 1999 and 2008?
I mean, he was an actor who wasn't totally on my radar. I saw The Patriot because I'm a Roland Emmerich fan and a Mel Gibson fan. So I definitely went and saw that and thought he was good in that movie. I guess it dropped off my radar, really, because I didn't see A Knight's Tale until after the fact. And A Knight's Tale is excellent. If you have not seen it, fantastic movie. Totally entertaining. I remember hearing about it and being like, it was like a medieval movie, but they had like a rock soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's like ELO and like all these other bands. And I was like, I don't know, this sounds weird. I don't think it's going to be good. Great movie though, really good. And then Brokeback Mountain came out and suddenly he was everywhere and he was a big deal. But I think probably part of the backlash crew in the sense of like when I heard he was going to be the Joker. Jack Nicholson was my Joker, or Cesar Romero was probably really my Joker if I'm being honest. But like I was 16 when Batman '89 came out, and that was the Joker for almost 20 years. So the idea that anybody when you really think about it, there was no other Joker between 1989 and 2008. Now I know we've had 4 or 5 since. But it was like a sacred role in some ways in the Batman lore that it really took it. It was like, who's going to top Jack Nicholson? And so when they had that reveal at the end of Batman Begins, it was like, ooh, the Joker's going to be the next bad guy in the movie. Oh my God, who's that? Who are they going to get? And then I was like, what? They got the Brokeback Mountain guy, the hunk from The Patriot, and like all those teeny bopper movies. So I definitely was not convinced. Did not see Brokeback Mountain. I knew that he had a reputation as being a guy who was growing as an actor, that he had been in these teen movies and kind of been like a pinup Tiger Beat guy. And Brokeback Mountain showed like he has range. He's growing as an actor. So I was like, all right, well, maybe, but I just didn't think that he would ever really fit that role. And then, of course, I was served up humble pie when the movie came out. Now looking back, he's a tremendous actor who I think really hit the nail on the head. That, I mean, it's a cliche to say, but I mean, his career was cut way too short, because of what he could have brought to the table. When you see what he did with that role, where he could have gone as an actor, it's a terrible loss when anybody dies so young. Movies notwithstanding. I mean, just in general, in terms of what he, his life and his family and everything. But in terms of what he could have given as an artist, it's definitely a tragedy because he clearly had a tremendous well to draw from in terms of talent and imagination and creativity as an actor.
I was going to switch gears to the other actor, but it seems like we are wanting to talk about the Joker. Let's just jump right into Heath's role as the Joker. Part of my research, Heath Ledger didn't just play the Joker, he built him from the ground up. To prepare, Ledger famously locked himself in a London hotel room for about 6 weeks. During that isolation, he filled notebooks with thoughts, sketches, and unsettling ideas in the Joker's voice. These journals reportedly included dark jokes, disturbing images, and notes about chaos and anarchy. Ledger's way of tapping into the psychology of a character who lives without moral structure. He drew inspiration from A Clockwork Orange's Alex DeLarge, especially in tone and menace, punk rock icons like Sid Vicious with that anarchistic energy, and comic sources like The Killing Joke and Arkham Asylum, where the Joker's insanity is portrayed as both theatrical and terrifying. He also collaborated closely with director Christopher Nolan to create a voice and look that felt completely original, that included the now iconic greasy green hair, smeared makeup, and the homemade look of his clothes. The scarring, never really explained in the film, was Ledger's idea, giving the Joker a mythic, unknowable edge. And Ledger's Joker is magnetic chaos. He doesn't just oppose Batman. He mocks the entire idea of order and control. Every scene crackles with unpredictability. He's calm when he should be furious. He's giddy when he should be afraid. You can never pin him down. And what I think set Ledger's portrayal apart his vocal choices, the shifting pitch, the tongue clicking, and a kind of slurred sing-song delivery that felt as though the Joker was amused by his own horror, which when you watch an interview with Tom Waits, which MC brought up, he sounds just like him. It's hard to tell the two apart. His Ledger's physicality, the hunched shoulders, the jerky movements, the slow clapping, and frequent lip licking, partly due to prosthetic scars, created a performance that felt animalistic and yet theatrical at the same time. His subversion of his expectation. He doesn't play the Joker for laughs. He plays him for discomfort. Ledger's Joker isn't camp. He's chilling, almost documentary level real in his unpredictability. Ledger made each moment feel like he was writing the rules in real time. The magic trick scene, the nurse costume, the interrogation, each moment is unforgettable and entirely his own. And then when we talk about the Joker and the legacy of it, whether true or not, we have to talk about how it was left. There's long been speculation about how deeply the role affected Heath Ledger's mental health, especially given his untimely death. It's important to be clear, there's no definitive evidence that playing the Joker caused his death. What we do know is that Ledger suffered from chronic insomnia and anxiety, issues that predated the film, and he reportedly had trouble sleeping during the shoot. He was prescribed a mix of medications, including painkillers, anti-anxiety drugs, and sleeping aids. In January 2008, 6 months before The Dark Knight premiered, Ledger died of an accidental overdose. The narrative that Joker killed him is dramatic, but misleading. Yet it's understandable why it persists. Ledger poured so much intensity into the role that it feels haunted in retrospect. That said, the legacy, which we keep coming back to, the word legacy, the legacy is undeniable. Ledger redefined what a comic book villain could be. His Joker wasn't just a performance, it was a benchmark. It earned him the Oscar and arguably shifted the Academy's perception of these films. Without Ledger's Joker, you don't get Joaquin Phoenix's Joker. You don't get the darker prestige tone of later superhero films. Somehow still, yeah, we got Leto's Joker. But that's a thing. That's a thing that happened that we're just going to push to the side. And side note, and something that really bothered me as I was researching all this, they unceremoniously dropped trying to find who gave Ledger his fatal mixture of prescriptions. And it just kind of pisses me off that somebody out there fucked up with prescribing him all these meds that was a killer cocktail. Anyway, Heath's Joker, I want to start with you, MC, because you have an affinity for this performance. I know you love it, so tell us why.
So to jump back a little bit, one of the things I remembered as you were talking is an interview I read with Christopher Nolan where he talked about why he cast Heath Ledger, because at the time, or shortly prior to the time, he was known, as we've all said, as kind of just this heartthrob. But Nolan said something to the extent of he saw him in Brokeback Mountain and realized that he was a fearless actor. I remember that word, fearless. And I think that is very indicative of sort of the vision that Nolan had for the movie, but also the length he wanted the performer to go to bring that character to life. And the Dark Knight Joker is a force. I think that's the best way to describe that character. The impact of that character on culture since the movie came out, which is we're close to 20 years now, can't be understated. And before we came on today, I was trying to deep dive in my own brain and think of why I was so, because there was a good, 5-6 years where I wouldn't call myself obsessed, but I was very enamored with this character. But luckily I came back to the right side of the force there. And I think what it comes down to, it was kind of like a duh moment, is charisma. This is one of, if not the most charismatic performances in movie history. And you can say that about every single line, every single scene, every single frame of this character. It just is the right kind and such a delicate balance, kind of what you were talking about before, where he's giddy when he's supposed to be angry, or he's doing something terrible, but we as the audience somehow find ourselves laughing. It's this mix of nuances that make the performance entirely unique, and therefore entirely gripping in a way that not just in superhero movies, but any villainous performance that's received fanfare or accolades. And I'm thinking of like Max Cady and Hannibal Lecter and, you know, characters like that. There's a certain level of seduction that they all bring to their movie universes where they seduce the characters in the movie into their web of plans or shenanigans that they're going to try to pull off. And they're not outwardly threatening. They're not Megatron. They're not, you know, M. Bison or something like that. They're layered. And for me, this character was just such a classically charismatic character. It was and it remains impossible to look away. And I think that's ultimately why I just became so kind of infatuated. And the fact that it's a comic book movie too. I mean, growing up, I read comics. I was not a very big DC guy. I was always more Marvel, X-Men and things like that. But I loved I did like Batman. I like Batman a lot more then than I do now. And so I was aware of the Joker. I knew kind of what the Joker was. I had the Jack Nicholson Joker as a frame of reference. But that performance and that movie was validating for anyone who grew up being a comic book nerd and then sort of pointing at the screen and saying, see, this is why it's awesome.
To you, Jeremy, I want to ask, because you said that you had like Jack Nicholson's Joker was your Joker, right? Or even before that. Is Heath Ledger now your Joker?
Well, I think I'll always love the 89 Batman because of nostalgia. Just when, you know, at that time, at that age, that was just like the summer of Batman. And it was a great summer for movies all around. So I always have a fond memory of that time. So I think Jack Nicholson will always kind of be my Joker because he represents a certain time in my life in general. But I think it's undeniable that Heath Ledger owns that role in the larger scheme of pop culture. He is the Joker. And I think that he is the one that all other Jokers until the end of time, most likely, including Joaquin Phoenix, will be measured against. So yes and no, I guess.
Rudy, we'll get to you, but is it weird? I don't necessarily look at Joaquin Phoenix's Joker as Joker because it seems like a completely different, separate, kind of more well-rounded character. It's not just a villain.
Well, I'll just quickly interject fast and say, to spoil Joker 2, for those who may not have seen it, he's not the Joker, as it turns out. So, and that's sort of revealed at the end that the first movie sort of sets up that he's going to become the Joker. And then the end of the second movie says, no, he's actually not. You know, he is, it was, you know, I don't know if I should blurt out the ending, but it's a terrible movie. So I don't, you know, you shouldn't waste your time with it anyway. But you know, he is not the Joker. Yeah, that's clearly, I think the filmmakers felt the same way.
Rudy is shocked right now, but it is. I watched Joker 2, hoping it was better than anybody else said it was going to be. And then after watching it, did a deep dive into what the director was doing. And I have to say, it's probably one of the first films I have ever seen that is a middle finger to the fans. And it was essentially what he was designing himself. Anybody that loved the Joker for the wrong reasons, he was going to make a movie to piss them off. And it was like, holy shit.
I don't know. I don't know if I love the Joker for the wrong reasons. It pissed me off. I think it pissed. I don't see who could, unless your name is Todd Phillips, how you could have walked out of that movie and not been enraged.
Going over to Rudy, for anybody that wants to listen to the best opening scenes of all time at the Mount Rushmore podcast episode, Rudy brought the beginning of the Dark Knight movie. Rudy, before I ask you what your relationship is with Heath Ledger's Joker, is it because Heath Ledger's Joker is so good that volume of the rest of the movie is turned down somewhat? Because when he's on screen, I don't want to see anybody else. I don't want the Batman view during the interrogation scene. I want all Joker all the time when it comes to it, even to the point where Aaron Eckhart is doing probably the best Two-Face on screen, better than Tommy Lee Jones's cartoon, I will say. Anybody can argue with me if they want to. But because Heath Ledger's, I mean, you got Cillian Murphy playing Scarecrow. I could give two fucks because Heath Ledger's Joker is somewhere in that movie. Is the rest of the movie toned down because of that? Or is The Dark Knight just a really good movie no matter what?
I would say it is not toned down, and it's just a very good movie because of the scenes in between. you get to see the Joker, and you're immediately captivated. He has that riz, like MC said. That one's for the kids. I'll explain it later, Jeremy. And then like it's like it gets your heart rate up, and then you have to calm down. And then you get all those ancillary scenes between Fox and Morgan Freeman and Bruce Wayne and everything else that's going on, and all of the themes and storylines existing. And then you just do that until you get to that next pop of endorphins, that adrenaline pop of Heath Ledger being on the screen. So I'm going to say that he doesn't outshine it. It's just a really good movie.
And what's your relationship with this Joker?
Oh, man. So I knew that this Joker was going to be good, and I knew it from the trailer, because I don't know if people remember the teaser trailer or the trailer. The teaser trailer did it the best, where, it was building up that he was the Joker. We were waiting for the Joker. Batman was going against the Joker. And the very last scene, they don't even show the Joker in the teaser trailer. The very last scene, I don't even think they show it in the trailer, is just... It's like a fading screen, and it's Ledger's voice saying, "I'm a man of my word." And the laugh comes out. And I remember we were sitting in the family dining room where the computer was, and I played it from my family, and everybody was like, "Oh!" And I knew in that moment, I was like, this is going to be something very special. So I did bring it as like the best opening scene of all time, which it made. I'm not going to say what happened. I won't spoil things for the listener, but you don't really get the whole Joker vibe until the scene with the crime families meeting in the kitchen, and his entrance is like the most iconic reveal, because it's just a slow laugh, a deliberate ha ha. And that right there, people were moving in the theater, like adjusting, getting ready, because they were building up to this reveal of this character that and style of the character that would penetrate the cultural zeitgeist forever. There are 20-year-old NBA basketball players with Heath Ledger's Joker's face tattooed on them. It's like one of the most, I don't want to say cliche, because they're big, and if I ever run into one of them, they could punch me, but like, it's like are you tough? Do you like anarchy? Oh, are you different? Let's get that Joker tattooed on your body, but it's everywhere. And that, in itself, I don't feel like lessens or cheapens it. It just speaks to how strong of an impact that performance left on all of us.
Batman in The Dark Knight is the least interesting character. There's the Joker, there's Bruce Wayne, and I'm differentiating Bruce Wayne and Batman, Harvey Dent, and then later Two-Face, Alfred, even Rachel, which is a terrible name. It's just gross. But yeah, I got you. But all of those characters and their arcs, no matter how big or little, are interesting throughout the whole movie. Batman, the character of Batman, is just almost there as an obligation. There's interesting stuff. There's, cool Batman things that happen, but character-wise, it's like Heath Ledger, A tier or S tier, whatever it is, up at the top, God tier, and then those other characters I mentioned in the middle, and then Batman. And I think that just speaks to, like you were saying before, the importance and the equity of the Joker in the universe, and then also the specific performance in The Dark Knight.
Jeremy, to throw it to you, because the next question I had was, and the last one, but kind of a fun one that there's no real answer to. You opened my eyes to the fact that the end of The Dark Knight has one of the coolest endings possible, and hints at what could have been the third film. If Heath Ledger didn't die, what would have been, do you think, the next iteration that we would have seen from Ledger's Joker? Because Cillian Murphy keeps coming back as Scarecrow, so I don't doubt that they would not have brought him back for something in the third film.
Yeah, I definitely think they would have, because especially the whole movie was set up as going to be this big manhunt for Batman. And it would have been amazing if at the same time there was some kind of breakout of Arkham or something, and crime overruns Gotham, and the Joker becomes, the Joker, the crime boss of the city, the clown prince of crime. And the only man who can bring him down is the most wanted man in the city. And so the police have a choice to make of like, do we turn to this man who supposedly murdered our White Knight, our hero, and caused all this mayhem? But, it's like the better the devil you know. I feel like it would have been something like that, like some kind of crazy, anarchy type situation where the Joker. And I mean, I had this whole idea of what they could have done without digressing too much was that they bring in Edward Nygma as a profiler who's trying to understand who Batman really is and discovers the identity of Batman, and it almost drives him crazy he becomes crazy because he's trying to solve the riddle of who Batman is, and then solves it but almost keeps it to himself because now he's privy to the answer to the greatest riddle that's vexing Gotham, and it drives him over the edge. And maybe him and the Joker pair up a la Two-Face and Riddler in Batman Forever, or maybe not, but I feel like that could have been such a cool story. I feel like the whole Manhunt story was totally overlooked. There's that one scene in The Dark Knight Rises where he returns and all the cops in the city are chasing him. And it's like, that should have been the movie, and not 8 years later or whatever it was. It should have been 6 months later. And this has been Bruce Wayne or Batman's life every night. He's got to go out and fight crime because that's what he does. He's compelled to do it. It's his mission. It's his whole reason for being. But every time he goes out, the cops are on him, and he's got to run around the rooftops and hide and whatever. But next night, he's back at it again because what else is he going to do? I feel like that should have been the story, that instead of him hiding in his house going, I'm sad because fighting crime got people hurt, he should have been like, no, I let this happen because I let my guard down, and I'm never going to do that again. I'm full on Batman now, and Batman can never rest again because he eased back. And what happened? The city went to hell in a handcart, and now I'm just going to be Batman, and I'm just going to beat the crap out of everyone every night.
Yeah, that idea is the sole property of this podcast because that sounds amazing. All right.
Oh, it would have been such a good movie. Oh.
MC, just real quick, in all of your fandom, did you ever come across any idea for the third Batman film before Heath's death?
So I do remember reading somewhere that there's a novelization of The Dark Knight Rises, and that there's a scene where the Joker exists in that universe. And I don't remember much beyond that, but it was something sort of like Bane was still the villain, but the Joker had not just completely disappeared, which was it was sort of weird to imagine because obviously it's sort of a less impactful scenario than it would be had the Joker character actually been a part of the story. But also it was kind of a nice choose your own adventure, use your imagination kind of thing. And I think I would be reticent to suggest they did something like that in the movie, like shown a shadowy figure that was clearly in a purple suit or something and no dialogue, just he's still here, because that would have been maybe disrespectful, or I can imagine there would have been a lot of uproar had they done that. And if you were going to do something different for Dark Knight Rises, I mean, Arnold as Mr. Freeze could have been really cool. No, I don't know. I like Jeremy's idea. I think the idea that, because it kind of actually relates back to Dark Knight in the sense that in The Dark Knight, the Joker is unleashed on the city because the mob hires him, basically. There's that whole monologue Alfred has where he's talking about, in their desperation, they turned to a man they truly didn't understand and they let open Pandora's box, and now the Joker's running wild. And so The Dark Knight Rises could have been a really nice way to kind of circle back and say Batman is, like Jeremy said, is the only one who can take care of this problem, whether that means killing the Joker, catching the Joker, whatever. And so in order to allow that to happen, they need to completely turn their view of how the things transpired in Dark Knight with Harvey Dent and with all that. And again, that's something that they kind of tiptoed into in Dark Knight Rises. They alluded to the fact that Harvey Dent was dead. Commissioner Gordon had the note, but he knows the truth, so he didn't read the note and all that. And there were just kind of these like little, almost like gimmies that they didn't explore in a way that was as compelling. So I think Batman being both the hero and the villain in The Dark Knight Rises, I think that could have been really cool. And I think it would have been very meaningful and very dramatic to pull off.
All right. Well, let's talk about Robert Downey Jr. Robert Downey Jr. was born in 1965 into a filmmaking family and started acting as a child. By the 1980s, he was part of Hollywood's Brat Pack, but it was in the 90s that his talent truly emerged, earning an Oscar nomination for Chaplin, where he played Charlie Chaplin, in 1992. Despite a string of acclaimed performances, Downey's career was nearly derailed by substance abuse and arrests. But in the mid-2000s, he mounted one of the greatest comebacks in Hollywood history. In 2008, the same year as Tropic Thunder, he also starred in Iron Man, launching the Marvel Cinematic Universe and becoming one of the most bankable stars on Earth. There's a lot more to talk about when it comes to Robert Downey Jr. I remember him from Less Than Zero, which was a Bret Easton Ellis adaptation. I don't know him so much in the Brat Pack because that Brat Pack was even earlier than me. That's back in like the St. Elmo's Fire. I was more Breakfast Club Brat Pack. But what do we think of Robert Downey Jr. as an actor? And you know what? I don't like to point out your age, my friend, but you've kind of already hinted at the fact that this is more your era. So, Jeremy, what did you think about Robert Downey Jr. in the 80s and 90s and then post 2008?
I always liked Robert Downey Jr. He was a great actor in Weird Science. It was probably one of the first things I remember seeing him in. But then he did a great movie, a very underrated movie called Firstborn, Peter Weller, and it's like a suburban. It was filmed like in the suburbs not far from where I grew up in Bergen County, New Jersey. So I kind of always have an affinity for that movie. And it's basically like Peter Weller is like an abusive stepfather. Robert Downey Jr. plays the friend to one of the kids. He's trying to remember who the main kid was, who played. Corey Haim was the brother. Christopher Collett was the main character. I don't remember who that is. Sarah Jessica Parker was in it. But anyway, yeah, Firstborn was a great movie. Obviously, The Pickup Artist, Less Than Zero, Back to School. How can I forget? He was in Back to School. So he was always considered like a, great actor, great. Like he was always kind of like the crazy friend, like in those movies. And he played that role very well. He also did a movie I remember in the 80s called 1969. The 80s was like big time 60s nostalgia, like the Wonder Years and like all the 60s bands made comebacks around in the late 80s. And so they capitalized and they made a movie called 1969 with Kiefer Sutherland and him, and I think Winona Ryder. They played hippies who were trying to cross the border to Canada to avoid the draft. Very cheesy, kind of like rose-colored view of the 60s, but I always have a soft spot for it. It had a great soundtrack. So he was a good actor. He was always, enjoyable to watch. He had a lot of charisma, a lot of personality. I definitely always enjoyed seeing him in movies. And then it was when Chaplin came out that it was like, which is a movie that kind of bombed hard. But now, in retrospect, that was really the turning point that it was like, oh, wow, this guy can actually act, too. And he's like a real performer, not just sort of the goofy best friend character.
But I think it's funny when it comes to like Chaplin, because that was 92. He still didn't really lead films, right? Because he was like the guy in Natural Born Killers who was kind of like a third act person. Home for the Holidays, which is my favorite Thanksgiving film. He plays the brother that doesn't show up until like the second act. Like he didn't really, even something like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang in 2005, he was kind of playing off of Val Kilmer. Another one that I want to point out is Wonder Boys, because as a writer, Wonder Boys is one of my favorite like writer, quote unquote writer films with Michael Douglas playing the writer, but he's kind of just the friend in that. He always kind of like plays the friend.
Yeah. That was his sweet spot. I remember there was a movie he did with Marissa Tomei, and he was that was like
what was that? Heart and Souls?
No, Heart and Souls is the one where he plays it. I don't know if he plays a ghost or he plays a guy who can see ghosts and all the ghosts he helps them or something. But it was called Only You, I think, and it was like
that's it.
Marissa Tomei was like fated to meet this guy by the fortune teller, and originally it was supposed to be played by somebody from either Beverly Hills 90210. Or Melrose Place, like a hunk, like one of those hunk, like Luke Perry or something, because he was supposed to be this like devilishly handsome man who was like the man of her dreams. And that fell through, and they cast Robert Downey Jr. instead. And it kind of changed the dynamic of the movie. And it was really their attempt, I think, to turn him into a romantic leading man, and it didn't work. And he went back to kind of being more of a character actor. I don't remember what year that came out. 94. I just looked up 94. Because then if you look then, he doesn't really do a lot of U.S. Marshals, that's right. He was in that. Oh, no. He was never really a leading man. Even at sort of the height of his 80s and 90s fame, he was never really the guy who could carry a movie on his own, which is crazy to think now. But
I mean, the other thing, when you're looking at his IMDb, as I have up as we talk, you can't see where the drug problems and the incarceration happened because of how he was working and the release dates of everything like that. I remember it was happening during Ally McBeal, which is 2000 to 2002. But between 2000 and 2002, he does Wonder Boys, a couple shorts, and then Ally McBeal, and then he's back at it with Gothica and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Good Night, Good Luck, A Scanner Dark. Like, Hollywood never gave up on the guy. Hollywood always kind of saw what he was bringing to the table and kind of just hoped that he would get past his demons. Because Zodiac comes out in 2007, the year that we're talking before this, and that's one of my favorite performances of his. MC, you had a picture of Robert Downey Jr. at your wedding.
I forgot about that. Yeah, a little backstory on that. So let's see, we got married in 2019. I forget when Endgame came out, but we had the shelf of, people that we had lost, that had passed on, that we wish could be at the wedding. And so it was like my grandma, my wife's grandma, my wife's grandfather, some pets, and then at the end, a picture of Tony Stark. Which was great because you would see people going up and getting, all sentimental, like, oh, this is so sweet. And then wait a minute, what the fuck? Is that Iron Man? So yes, I forgot about that until you just mentioned it. Other than Natural Born Killers, I did not really catch on to Robert Downey Jr. until Iron Man. And I think that my frame of reference is from Iron Man and beyond for him. Like I said, with the exception of Natural Born Killers, which we'll talk about later, because I feel like his character in Natural Born Killers is Kirk Lazarus adjacent. But you said he was one of the most bankable stars in Hollywood, and what I remember about Iron Man and the subsequent years and movies that weren't established properties was the movies like I'm going to forget some, but The Soloist, there was Doolittle, there was that movie The Judge, I think it was called, with Robert Duvall. There was Due Date with him and
Zach Galifianakis.
And all of those movies, with the exception of Due Date, were bombs from what I remember. And Due Date, even though it made money, it did not live up to the expectations of this, because this is coming off The Hangover and the momentum of the Zach Galifianakis popularity teamed up with Robert Downey Jr. That should have been another slam dunk billion-dollar comedy. But it always, I remember somebody once said to me that people are going to see those movies, the Marvel movies, for the characters, not necessarily the actors. And I think that's partly true. I think that it's way more, nuanced than that. But I do think that he played Tony Stark and Iron Man perfectly. I think there are probably other actors who could have done as good, if not better, a job. But I think in terms of the Iron Man that we got for our generation for those 10 years up until Endgame, that was part of the cultural zeitgeist that we were very lucky to have.
A lot of good points that you brought up. First and foremost, you've passed by Sherlock Holmes. So that was one of his leading franchises that I think yes, it was Guy Ritchie, but I feel like it was Robert Downey Jr. putting in the work for those.
That's fair. When was that? What years were those?
I think that was 2009. I think it was right after Iron Man. He came out with Sherlock Holmes.
Okay.
You did catch, Hollywood does this bullshit thing where, and even if you're selling a movie or you're trying to cast a movie, they will look at people and be like, well, what's their box office? Like, what's their average box office? And you're mainly casting that film based off of what the person's box office records are, not necessarily if they are actors that fit the part or anything like that. Nowadays, because of franchises, like you would look at Kristen Stewart's numbers and be like, yeah, let's get her because she makes a lot of money, even though that's back in Twilight days, right? But her average gross looks really good. So yes, that is kind of like a bullshit thing that Hollywood does when it comes to bankability. But I looked it up as you were talking, and in the top 20 superhero movies, all of Robert Downey Jr.'s are in the top 20, out of anybody. So you have the Avengers Endgame and Infinity War at the top, which he was part of a collection. But when he's in the Spider-Man No Way Home, right, he's in that. the Avengers, obviously the collection. But then you have Iron Man 3, Captain America Civil War, the one that he was half the star in, Spider-Man Far From Home, and then Iron Man 2 and 1 are also up there. So perhaps they're saying, like, also when it comes to Marvel superhero movies, people are going to see the Iron Man ones over anything, right? And
I mean, that's fair. And like it or not, he is the reason we have the MCU, which is a fictional universe that exists in every form of media we could possibly consume to the tune of billions upon billions of dollars. He and his movie in 2008, Iron Man, is the reason that exists, because of that perfect blend of his performance, the execution and the direction, and I would say the bump or the nudge from movies like The Dark Knight, to where superhero movies were accessible again for a larger mass audience.
And before I throw it to you, Rudy, the other movie that we skipped, which I don't know if it's Second Chance Cinema, if we could do it for Second Chance Cinema, but it's one of my favorite films that I recommend to a lot of people that nobody seems to have heard of, which is Jon Favreau's Chef with Robert Downey Jr. and John Leguizamo. So that's always a good one. Makes the best grilled cheese ever in that movie. Rudy, your thoughts on Robert Downey Jr.?
He wasn't an actor that I sought out. I kind of always just happened to be watching a movie that he was in. So like my dad loves Rodney Dangerfield. That's how I saw Robert Downey Jr., right? And Back to School. My aunts and grandma were big into these, like, those movies of the 90s where they, you know, it's something fantastical happens and he can see dead people and he has to help fulfill that their last dying wish, or the body swap movie, you know, those things. My parents loved those, so I watched. So that's how I met Robert Downey Jr. I remember in the Ally McBeal days, it was like a big deal that he was going to be on the show. Like, I remember like them pushing it hard, like Robert Downey Jr. And it'd be like, oh yeah, he was in those movies, you know, but I never really like watched Ally McBeal. I think, just to wrap it up and not repeat anything that anyone else has already said, because it's been perfect, it's rare that a character and the actor align so much. Like, it's rare that like Deadpool and Ryan Reynolds, like, you feel like, oh, their personalities, the character and his kind of, you know, and he can pull that off. I feel like Tony Stark is Robert Downey Jr., just turned up a little bit, right? Like he feels himself, and we all benefit from it. And I think that it's super hard to disconnect him from that character for the rest of his career, honestly, because everybody is just, he's imprinted on all of us.
All right. Well, I mean, the episode's not Joker versus Iron Man. It's Joker versus another character that we came to talk about. And let's talk about controversy. Robert Downey Jr. is no stranger to character work. And for Tropic Thunder, he leaned hard into the absurdity of method acting, pushed to the extreme. His character, Kirk Lazarus, is a 5-time Oscar-winning Australian method actor who undergoes a fictional skin pigmentation procedure to play a black soldier in a Vietnam War movie. All right, now Downey took the role knowing it would be controversial, but his intent was to satirize the self-importance and racial blindness of method actors, not to mock black identity. He said in interviews that he, quote, felt it was my job to lose the risk every step of the way, end quote. He worked closely with co-writer director Ben Stiller and black castmates, especially Brandon T. Jackson, to ensure the satire was clear and the target was always white Hollywood, not black culture. I think in my mind, he worked closer with Brandon T. Jackson than he did with Ben Stiller. And we'll get into it, but I think Ben Stiller missed the mark with his character portrayal where Robert Downey landed it. To ground the performance, Downey also researched method actors like Daniel Day-Lewis and Russell Crowe. The accent, posture, and intensity of Lazarus were meant to parody actors who disappear so fully into their roles that they lose sight of reality, in this case, morality. But herein lies the trouble. Downey's performance is a tightrope walk between satire and absurdity. And somehow, motherfucker makes it work. He even, dare I fucking say, makes it cool. His Kirk Lazarus is over the top, committed, and ridiculous, but never lazy or broad. Every line is delivered with the gravitas of a man who truly believes he's the center of the cinematic universe, even when what he's trying to say is hilariously inappropriate. Even in the background, when the camera isn't on him, Downey as Lazarus is another dude playing a dude. It's, dare I say, comedic brilliance for a man who is funny, but not this funny. Guys, for the Academy to this movie isn't so far removed from Ben Stiller's oeuvre that it's like this nomination is like Hank Azaria getting a nomination for the Blue Raja in Mystery Men. Like, that's how fucking far uphill this motherfucker had to skate to get the nomination. He put in work. His voice and dialect. Downey speaks with an exaggerated Southern black vernacular, but what makes it funny is how he never breaks. The commitment is what sells the satire. Throughout the film, he's challenged by Al Pacino, Jesus Christ, that name, Al Pacino, who calls out the offensiveness of the portrayal. So the audience is always aware that this is the point. Downey plays it completely straight while the script critiques him in real time. And Downey's greatest strength here may be his deadpan seriousness in increasingly absurd situations. I know who I am. Oh, I'm not going to do it. I know who I am. I'm the dude playing the dude disguised as another dude isn't just a joke. It's a surgical strike on identity performance in Hollywood. Downey's Oscar nomination for Tropic Thunder was one of the most unexpected and polarizing of his career. Some praised the performance as brave satire. Others argued that blackface, no matter the context, should be off limits. Even at the time, it stirred debate, although reports indicate that NAACP was shown a screener of the film, and most in the audience gave it a thumbs up. Some, like Jamie Foxx and the late Chadwick Boseman, praised Downey's intent and execution. In Downey's own words, quote, "If I had known it was going to cause this much fuss, I probably wouldn't have done it. But then again, maybe that's why it needed to be done." End quote. In 2008, Downey's career was in full renaissance mode, like we said. Just months earlier, Iron Man had debuted, redefining his image from troubled actor to blockbuster star. The fact that he was nominated for Tropic Thunder, a bold, edgy comedy, spoke to just how much Hollywood was back in his corner. In hindsight, Tropic Thunder remains one of the most complex modern performances ever nominated for an Oscar, one that forces the audience to ask who is being made fun of, and is satire enough of a shield? This is where the controversy starts, gentlemen, because to me, the fact that Downey pulls this role off, the fact that when you look at Heath Ledger's Joker, I can't see where the Joker ends and Heath begins. It's the same thing for me when it comes to Kirk Lazarus and Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal of it. But I could be wrong. So who loves this performance as much as I do and wants to talk about it first?
I got your back.
Okay.
I got your back. Dude, okay, so that was great. That was amazing. This performance it brought worlds together. I can be hyperbolic here, but like, so my father exist in that age where you go, they don't make movies, like they can't make that movie today, like talking about like Blazing Saddles and like, oh, that can't be made today, they don't make them. This movie just brought that world and the world that loved Robert Downey Jr. as an actor and the absurdity of this whole concept into the theater, and they bonded over this character. You already said the dude line. There's another one that was quoted multiple times throughout like my years in youth work, from teens and all the way up to adults. They would say, everybody's a little gay sometimes. Like, that line wrecked people and it stayed with them. And the fact that he did it and he was aware, like, it's hard to explain. I'm so sorry. Downey was aware of what he was doing. He knew that he had this Iron Man thing that was going to blow up and be huge, and he was on his way back, and he needed to take the biggest left turn that he could from a superhero movie, because that will get you cast and seen forever just in superhero movies. And he chose this comedy that was absurd, and this character that is so absurd that it worked in all of his favor. There was not gonna be backlash. This performance and this character made him kind of iconic. And it's hilarious to think that now when we look back on it and it got nominated for an Oscar, it kind of makes me believe in the Oscars again, where you were talking about they're campaigned for, it's the studio pushing it. It's actually not the performance and all that stuff behind the Oscars. That nomination made you believe that, yes, the Oscars do recognize the best because what happened there was the best performance of the year.
And my audience does know that Oscars don't really look at comedies. They definitely don't look at Ben Stiller style comedies. I'm not going to say an adjective to define Ben Stiller comedies, but this nomination to me was so out of the blue. Like, I love Heath Ledger's joke. I love Heath Ledger's. I'm unsure if I'm going to vote for Downey at the end just to be an asshole or go with Heath Ledger because both of them are great performances. But this reminds me of like Blame Canada being nominated for Best Original Song, right? Like sometimes the Oscars go, this is such comedic brilliance that we cannot ignore it anymore. And so the fact that this came out the same year that Heath Ledger's Joker did is what I think is the travesty. And then everybody just kind of accepted Ledger's. And I was like, wow, I want to have a little bit more conversation. So I'm glad that you're here, all of you today. Jeremy, what do you think about this performance?
I mean, it's almost miraculous that it exists and that it was as successful as it was, not just financially and not just critically, but that it is even now almost 20 years later, still like nobody has gone back to it and canceled it, and been like, oh, it's actually offensive. It was okay at the time. Like, it still resonates. People still talk about Tropic Thunder and laugh about it. And I think it's a testament to the script, obviously, but to the way Downey walks that line of awareness, and parody, and keeps the focus of the parody in the right place, because it's about Hollywood's pomposity and their treatment of race and the way that they, actors become enamored with themselves to the point that they think they could do anything, regardless of how offensive or embarrassing or tone deaf it may be. And that's what the focus is, and that's what shines through even today, because people are so quick now to look at anything that anybody's done. They're digging through their Twitter histories. They're looking back at old, Tonight Show interviews, whatever it is, to find one thing that they could blow up and cancel them. And here's this performance. It's out there. It's in a major movie. It was nominated for an Oscar, and no one's coming after Robert Downey Jr. because you can't criticize that performance. You can't criticize what he did. And I think it's a testament to Downey as an actor, the way he kept the fist in the right place the entire time, towed that line exactly right. And I think it was, his timing, his physicality, what he brought to the role, and the delivery of some of these lines that are just ridiculous. He's like, I was raised, I worked as a saucier, and all these, just the way these lines are so silly and ridiculous. Or even the whole speech that he gives to Ben Stiller about his performance as Simple Jack. Again, he's using a word, that is now considered very offensive about, people with cognitive disabilities and special needs. But people still quote it in that context because Downey walks the line and has that deadpan delivery. And the whole time he's doing it, he's not just throwing what is now, a slur out there. He's using it to, again, skewer Hollywood and the pretentiousness of actors, and the way actors would talk to each other in this ridiculous way. So it's just very brilliant. And I think the reason it stood the test of time is because of what Downey brought to it.
And I have two questions for you, Jeremy, because one, anybody that wants to know about Jeremy's views on blackface can find a short episode at the end of season 3 with the Mount Rushmore podcast. So actually,
that really sounds very loaded the way you phrased that. Let me say my views are negative. Okay, let me just make that clear up front.
No, I like you leaving it open-ended. Like, what's he gonna say?
But so the two questions that came up as you were talking, one, is there another comedian, because to tell our audience, he's talking about Billy Crystal, and Billy Crystal trying to pull off blackface and failing, right? I don't think there's been another comedian that has even like touched being okay. Like, everybody's been canceled for blackface. I mean, I think it was the Canadian Prime Minister that was canceled for brownface, doing, I think, Indian. So, I mean, I've kind of just answered it myself. But the second thing is, you were about to do, Jeremy for the Mount Rushmore podcast is famous for impersonations. And you were about to do an impersonation of Robert Downey in Tropic Thunder. Isn't it weird that it's a white man impersonating a black man, and yet you still cannot do an impersonation of the voice without feeling like a twinge of like, I don't think I should do that?
It's true. Yeah. And I think, again, because it's like that's me saying I'm the dude playing the other dude but it's like I can't pull that off. And in that moment, Robert Downey Jr. could pull it off because of what he was communicating by being that character. If I did it now, it would come off as offensive, me just doing a very offensive stereotype. But Robert Downey Jr. was doing an offensive stereotype in such a way that you acknowledged its offensiveness and the root of its offensiveness, which is Hollywood pomposity and pretentiousness.
It's so layered. It's so layered. And one of my favorite people that can dig past the layers is MC. MC, help us out.
I am extremely disappointed that no one has mentioned white chicks yet, because I feel everything this performance encapsulates has been teed up and served via white chicks. And I'm only kind of joking. So I laugh at this performance. I appreciate the risks with this performance. I understand the controversy behind this performance. However, wonder how much of that has been genuine versus manufactured. And I think that this performance is lightning in a bottle. I think it's a combination of Robert Downey Jr.'s performance, but also the screenplay, the ensemble cast, who, even though he's largely the focal point of every scene he's in, they wouldn't be as funny if the rest of the cast wasn't just completely put off by what a buffoon he's being. There are definitely layers, and I think that the satire element of it is very well done, but I'm almost inclined to think that the satire element is more explored, or at least more obvious, when the movie's bookended by the fake trailer where it's just this over the top pretentious, what was it like? It was like a religious homosexual kind of taboo movie that he did the Tobey Maguire thing. Yeah. And then at the end, when he takes off his wig and stuff like that, and he's talking again as Kirk Lazarus, like that to me was the pompous dagger that they were trying to throw at Hollywood. And I don't know, again, if that's a good thing or a bad thing, because that means that in between the entire time that he was Lincoln Osiris, the name of the black Vietnam soldier, it was like just watching him as a character sometimes. And what I mean by that is that it was so naturally integrated into the movie that it was sometimes, again, it was hard to separate the actor from the character, though I don't think it was as difficult to look at him and be like, oh yeah, that's Robert Downey Jr., as it would have been to look at Heath Ledger and sort of have to squint to be like, oh yeah, that is Heath Ledger. And I think, again, I think this is a very, very good performance, and I think it hits all the beats and accomplishes everything it sets out to do. I will say, I do not think that he is the best character in Tropic Thunder.
Well, you like Tom Cruise?
I think the Les Grossman character accomplishes what Robert Downey Jr.'s character sets out to do in probably a third of the time, with a more vicious bite, and potentially, considering the fact that he's literally lampooning Hollywood producers, I think that's almost, in the world of movies and who you don't want to piss off, I mean, that's a hell of a risk too.
Unless you own your own religion.
Well, I mean, you could listen to the Tom Cruise episode of Second Chance Cinema for some more deep thoughts on that. But I mean, to be fair, to be honest, looking side by side, I remember first seeing the movie, and yes, of course, Robert Downey Jr. had billing, so we knew he was in the movie. But when Tom Cruise came on as Les Grossman, it took a minute.
I still do look at like Tom Cruise's character and really focus on the forearms and the hands and wonder how they did that part. But I could tell it's more Tom Cruise than I could tell it's Robert Downey Jr. in the black makeup.
That could just be us, like, does the color purple look the same to me as it does to you? I mean,
True.
That's a very superficial thing. I think that, like, I thought it was, I remember thinking it was kind of cool when he got nominated. Again, the Blame Canada example is a perfect parallel because it was the same thing. It was like, wow, something from my wheelhouse got recognized by this nebulous governing body that I otherwise don't care about. So that's kind of cool. And so for both Tropic Thunder for both Robert Downey Jr. and Heath Ledger in the same year, that was kind of like I feel like they were casting a wider net. It was somewhat effective.
I think one of my problems with the rest of the movie is I feel like I'm watching Jack Black play Shallow Hal, right? And then I'm watching Ben Stiller make Ben Stiller style jokes. To me, that's what makes it stand out, much like Heath Ledger's Joker stands out because everything else is just so dark in The Dark Knight. Ledger built his Joker, as we said, from psychological trauma and anarchy and chaos, and then Downey built Lazarus with a deeper look at ego and delusion. Who do you think is playing the deeper character? Because for me, it's kind of, I mean, I'll answer it and then I'll open it up. But like Joker's, he's playing the opposite, and that's like the choices that are made. But it's not necessarily on a deeper level. But Tropic Thunder is a Ben Stiller film, so it's that deep.
I would say, just hop in real quick, I'll be quick. Downey is achieving a deeper thing, a deeper performance. Method acting, kids, it's dangerous. You gotta be careful. All right, a lot of you go out there and be like, I'm so in my character. Yeah, but there are other people that exist in your world. So like, you're really just robbing yourself if all you're doing is drawing from this unresolved trauma or whatever you may be that makes you like not want to engage with people otherwise. So knowing that, and I mean, the Ledger performance is brilliant. We could go on, and we have about it. However, it is coming from a pretty unresolved trauma-based area. And then that's not, it's going to sound bad, I'm sorry. That's not hard. There are plenty of people that draw in method acting and draw unresolved trauma, and they produce what they produce. But for Downey not to go that route, but more or less comment on that route and it is in its existence in the atmosphere in the studios, I think that was a deeper performance for me.
Rudy, I have a question. You are an award-winning actor. What are your thoughts? Because I have thoughts, but I don't want to speak, ignorantly. What are your thoughts on the concept of method acting?
I kind of think it's selfish. I mean, a lot of some of the best performances ever have been through method. However, I think it can be dangerous and it can affect the way that, because you don't, at some point, the camera's not on and you have to exist in the real world with the rest of us. And it can lead you down a path where that's not the case anymore. And I think there's more meaningful ways to achieve a character and establish that character full body without having to really tap into something dark.
Well, I was going to say that I think it's fucking ridiculous, which is a little less articulate and eloquent, because there are stories, everybody, and Spro, you mentioned this before, how there was a narrative constructed that he became so depressed and became so wrapped up in the Joker that he killed himself, which largely is a very sensational narrative that would probably sell a lot of tabloids, but based on the primary source stories from the set, interviews with people like Michael Jai White, who had a scene where Heath Ledger kills him, and Michael Caine, and all these people who were around him said that he flipped the switch. Nolan called action, he would go into the Joker, Nolan called cut, and then he was Heath Ledger again. I think that's more impressive than method acting. I think being able to do that to the degree that he did, and being able to be such an artist that you can literally control by flipping that switch your talent, that to me is way more impressive.
Jeremy, you were going to say something and then Rudy cut you off.
No, I was just going back to your original question about who gave the deeper performance. I might have to go with Heath Ledger here, and it's not even for what you see on screen, but for what's implied off screen about who his character is, because he subtly raises questions throughout, obviously, first and foremost, through his scars narrative about different reasons, different ways he got the scars. So it's clear he's inventing a past for himself. And then there's thoughts about is he a character who's ex-military? I heard one theory that he's a very rich, spoiled trust fund kid who grew up privileged and does all this because he's had everything handed to him and he's now in search of greater and greater thrills and obviously very mentally ill. And all of that translates, even if it's not said or communicated by Heath Ledger, everything from his choice of wardrobe to his facial expressions, his laughter, all of it does sort of make you wonder what's really going on. Who is this person? What's driving him? Why is he behaving this way? What happened? Is he just a bored rich kid? Is he some kind of veteran who has PTSD? Is he insane? Was he a product of abuse? And any of those could be true. And any of those could be true, not because they're in your imagination, but because of the way he brings all of that nuance forward in his performance. So I feel like for me, I become obsessed as a viewer with the mystery of who the Joker is, not again because of what I'm wondering, but because of the way he draws you in and you want to know him better. You want to understand him better and you never get to. So he is at the surface, but everything that you see at the surface hints at something more underneath and makes you want to know more. He's incredibly intriguing. So I might have to give it to him for the deeper performance.
And I agree with everything that you and like MC have said. And MC with like the method acting versus real acting, just turning it on is a sight to see in itself. But also, I mean, there's also really good method actors out there like Daniel Day-Lewis, who that's his thing, and he turns in almost a great performance every single time. I do want to throw out my opinion of like when we talk about like which one is a deeper role. Watching Tropic Thunder last night and the scenes where people are like, stop it, just stop. And he's like, I can't. I don't know why. I just can't. Like, there's a hurt there. Like, there's almost like a psychological block where he's like, I don't even know why I can't stop doing this. I can't stop doing this. I'm going to be this person. And he does it a lot in the film. He does it when he can't express himself because he is a dude playing a dude disguised as a dude. Like, he is such a confused individual that even when they watch a man blown up by a claymore mine and everybody else is like, no, this is going to be part of the movie. He's like, I can't describe to you, but this is FUBAR, bitches. Like, what are we doing here? Like, we just saw a man get explained, and he's trying to make an argument and he can't because he's got to break through mental shells in order to do it. The last question I have before we put in our votes: if the roles were reversed, if Downey had died in 2008 and Ledger had lived, would the Oscar outcome have been any different, do you think?
I think you can definitely make an argument for that. And this is kind of what we're asking, really, is if Heath Ledger hadn't died, would he have won? And that's a fair question, because as a society, we tend to romanticize people when their lives are cut short, especially people who are well regarded and well liked. I mean, you see it in sports entertainment all the time. There are people who maybe would not have gotten into Hall of Fames or received certain accolades during their careers, but somehow after the fact and due to circumstances surrounding their passing or whatever, suddenly they become remarkable. And there's certainly weight to that. I mean, it is a situation where nobody was expecting to wake up one morning and read that Heath Ledger died. I mean, it was a shock. It was a sad thing, considering he was 28 when he passed away. Same thing with, and I remember, I don't get hit hard by celebrity deaths, but the one that I do remember very vividly was Robin Williams. I was at an airport and I saw it on the TV and was just like, holy shit. But the Heath Ledger death, again, right away, I think it kick-started that sort of almost conspiracy theory of, is he going to win now because he passed away? Do we owe it to him that he turned in such a performance, and is his death going to push him over the edge? And emotionally, I can understand that. Academically, I think he turned in a better performance than Robert Downey Jr.
Foreshadowing, we're going to start with MC when we do the voting process.
I'll be ready.
Well prepared.
I know you like to prepare on these shows, Spro. I wanted to do my best to not come in like a jackass and have my ducks in a row. I'm doing this to support you, my friend.
So the other thing, so to even broaden the question for Jeremy, the Academy Awards recently made a blunder thinking that they were going to award Chadwick Boseman for his performance in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which eventually went to Anthony Hopkins for The Father. A surprise on two fronts. One, because of the Heath Ledger posthumous award. They figured that he was young. He didn't have a whole lot of filmography behind him. And now that his life is cut short, this is going to be his last time to win an Oscar. Where, in fact, the person that's been around for a while, Anthony Hopkins, may also win an Oscar. Same thing with Robert Downey Jr. If Heath Ledger didn't die, Robert Downey Jr. was their poster child of you could have substance abuse problems and we will still, if you're a great actor, we will put you on that pedestal and give you Iron Mans and everything like that moving forward. So if Heath Ledger didn't die, would they award their poster child of rehabilitation, or was this Heath Ledger's to lose?
I think that the death element is definitely not insignificant when considering why Heath Ledger won. But I still think he would have won because that movie was such an event, a cultural event, that it would almost be impossible to ignore. Plus, there was a lot of backlash that The Dark Knight itself didn't receive a Best Picture nomination, to the point that the following year and every year since they expanded the category. Unfortunately, now what they've done is just populate that category with more movies that no one cares about. But the idea was that, hey, your blockbusters can be nominated too. And because people were legitimately upset that a movie that was as massive as this, because again, this goes back to what I was saying, that back in the day, movies like Forrest Gump, movies like Titanic, that were blockbuster films that everybody went to go see throughout the year, got nominated and won Best Picture. And then, that changed. So a lot of people thought The Dark Knight is going to be a chance to bring that back, bring back the blockbuster to the Oscars, bring back the popular vote, the movies that people went to go see. It didn't, and people were upset. And so because of that, if Heath Ledger were alive, I still think he would have won, so the Academy could say, here's a bone, populace, vox populi, here, we give this to you.
Okay.
Rudy?
I think Heath Ledger would not have won the Oscar. Mainly because I feel like the Academy's bone to the superhero movies was the nomination in itself. I don't think that there had been an Oscar nomination for a performance in a superhero movie prior to Heath Ledger. So I feel like that was them recognizing this is something very special and it needs to be recognized as one of the best of the year. I think Downey would have won because of the titanic undertaking of the character that he was bringing forth. This was something that was so culturally taboo and just out of nowhere that he could have ended a career, and he turned it into just a masterful performance. And I think that would have been the Oscars decision had Heath Ledger been alive.
All right. Well, we came, we talked, let's vote. I don't have a very cool little saying to do right here, other than the fact that I think we have exhausted the conversation, which is exactly what I wanted to do with this episode. I love talking with you three. I think good things come out of our conversations. I learn a lot from you three and what you bring to the table. So regardless of how this all shakes out, I have no idea. I have a thought of how it's going to, but I have wanted to have this conversation for the past 17 years, and I can finally say that I did. So we'll go around the table. Rudy, who would you give the Oscar to? Would you give it to Heath Ledger or Robert Downey Jr.?
Robert Downey Jr.
Oh, shit. Heath died. We're in the reality that Heath Ledger died. You would still give it to Robert Downey Jr.?
Yeah.
I love it. Jeremy, who would you give the Oscar to?
It's tough. This conversation had the pendulum swinging for me, but at the end of the day, I got to go with Heath Ledger.
Heath Ledger. I'm going to go next. I'm going to go Robert Downey. I brought up the conversation, so I have to do it. The tiebreaker is, of course, the Academy Awards. So that's how that's going to go. But MC, tell us why Heath Ledger.
There are a couple reasons. So the main question that we have been spitballing around is, did his death affect how he was received by the Academy Awards? And while I don't doubt that there was some degree of effect, a lot, or I would even say the majority of legitimate praise for his role occurred before he passed away. And what I'm talking about are things like Christopher Nolan did an early screening of the bank heist scene like 6 months before Heath Ledger passed away. And there were critics that came out of it raving about that scene in particular and also his performance. There were also rough cuts in 2007 describing Ledger's Joker as mesmerizing and disturbing in ways that elevate the entire film. The point I guess I'm trying to make is that there was already Oscar talk for this role and this performance before he passed away. So maybe it did nudge him over the finish line, but I don't think it was what wholly contributed to his winning the Oscar. The other thing I think we neglected to touch on was the pedigree of each movie with regard to how the performances stood out amongst the rest of the cast. So if you look at Tropic Thunder, you have Ben Stiller, fantastic comedic actor. I think he's a genius. I think he's a great writer. Jack Black, again, another very talented comedic actor. He's probably the actor or the celebrity that I would choose to be if I could swap lives and existences with a celebrity. I think I would definitely pick Jack Black. Who else? Got Nick Nolte, Danny McBride, Tom Cruise. These are all fine actors and fine performers. But if we're talking about Oscars, let's look at the cast of The Dark Knight. Christian Bale, 4 nominations, 1 win. Michael Caine, 6 nominations, 2 wins. Gary Oldman, 3 nominations, 1 win. Christopher Nolan, 8+ nominations and 3 wins as of 2024. I'm not sure if that's changed, but I think that's still pretty accurate. This is a list. This cast is a billing of Oscar winners that Heath Ledger stood out amongst these incredible actors with an acting performance that was so good that he remains the only thing that people readily talk about when they talk about that movie. And so it was very clear that his talent, which is what we should be judging these awards on, I think, his talent was immeasurable and his talent was undeniable in a way that stacks up, again, emotionally, culturally, but also, I believe, academically. So I vote Heath Ledger.
It's a good argument.
Are you proud of me?
No, that was really good. I do have to correct. Christopher Nolan only has 2 Oscars, and they were both for Oppenheimer.
Okay, fair enough. 2 Oscars. So I got one of my stats wrong, but I did my homework as best I could.
No, as you were talking, I created a poster in my head of Heath Ledger standing amongst all these Oscar winners behind him, going to get his.
Morgan Freeman too. Don't forget.
Oh yeah.
I always say on this show, it's not who you want, it's who you can stomach. And I can stomach both of these, so it's not, I don't think it's a loss if one of them lost it to the other one. I don't even think if it's a loss if both of them lost it to Philip Seymour Hoffman. But I think as transformative performances go, it was Heath Ledger, it was Robert Downey Jr. for what they brought to the screen that year. Robert Downey Jr. got 2 votes. Heath Ledger got 2 votes, but the Academy Awards definitely went with Heath Ledger. And so we're going to declare we're not taking it away from anybody today. But this is what we do on A Take on the Academy. We ask the questions that make people uncomfortable. We dig into the performances that shaped pop culture and the ones the Academy either got right or maybe they got scared of. Heath Ledger's Joker wasn't just a performance. It was a cultural earthquake. But Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder held up a mirror to Hollywood's most self-congratulatory impulses and dared us to laugh and think at the same time. One gave us chaos, the other gave us commentary. Both were unforgettable, but only one walked away with the gold. Was it the right choice? We're split. But the Academy is the tiebreaker, and so the decision remains. Heath Ledger, may you rest in peace. A Take on the Academy comes together not to fuck with your memory, but to remind ourselves that RDJ had a better performance than what he was eventually awarded for. We have two other podcasts to plug. I'm going to turn to MC to plug one of them, and then I want the champion and the basement dweller of Mount Rushmore podcast to tag team the plug of that one. So first, MC.
Second Chance Cinema, the one that started it all, myself and Spro talking about movies that have gone under the radar. And we are on our 7th year now. You can check us out on any of the fine podcast platforms. You can find us through links and genealogy matches from this podcast. We're all part of one big podcast family. We've just also recently started focusing on the exciting world of movie stunts, which has been a incredible experience thus far with our sort of spin-off Second Chance Cinema Stunt Life. We've talked to some stunt performers. We've reviewed and talked about some very iconic but not well known, I guess that's kind of a oxymoron. We'll say we've talked about some very worthy action movies and scenes and set pieces and elements of stunt design, and we're pumped to keep moving forward with hopefully some big names, big interviews, big action. Second Chance Cinema and Second Chance Cinema Stunt Life.
Very nice. And then when it comes to the Mount Rushmore podcast, we have Jeremy and Root. We're all four a part of it. If you like debate, if you like more of this kind of conversation, it's usually even about 16 different topics or 16 different picks. But Jeremy, I don't want to spoil it, I guess, but Jeremy had a really good season 3 and Rudy had a really Rudy-like season 3. So both of you guys, tell us about the Mount Rushmore podcast.
This is a far less civil discussion and discourse than what you heard this evening, gentle listener. But it's a great time. Basically, we pick the Mount Rushmore of such a thing. So comic book heroes, sports heroes, album covers, whatever it is. It could be anything. We have one on bears, famous bears. We talk about anything and everything, and we pick 4 of the most iconic of said thing, and they go up on our fictional Mount Rushmore. The only problem is because there are 4 of us, and only 4 can make it. That means we bring 16 to the table, and 12 fall by the wayside, usually violently. There's anger, rage, profanity, curses upon homes, families, and generations invoked. But at the end, we all depart as friends. So it's a special podcast with 4 special people.
I got nothing. That was beautiful. You really encapsulated it.
It sums it up pretty well. It's a magical time.
All right. Well, thanks to Rudy, Jeremy, and MC from the Mount Rushmore podcast for jumping into the fire with us this evening. These aren't easy conversations, but they're the ones worth having. And here at Take on the Academy, we're not afraid to ask, what if they got it wrong? And what if we can do better? Because the Oscars may write history, but around here, we rewrite it. I'm Matthew Sprosty. This has been Take on the Academy. We'll see you next time.